Hello, and welcome back to Ycft. This week we are taking a look at Edward Scissorhands, directed by Tim Burton. It came out in 1990, starring Johnny Depp. This was the first time they collaborated.
Yeah.
The first of many times.
Many times.
Many times. And what a bizarre little film this is. It really is a strange one.
It is.
It's like, best way I describe it is a Gothic fairy tale.
Yeah, because I do wonder if some people maybe watching this are thinking that it might be an odd choice to do for the channel, considering that we are very obviously horror oriented. But I mean, there's enough sort of parallels in this film. There's enough interesting facts about this film that we thought that there's enough for a crossover. There's enough to talk about. And it is a Gothic fairy tale.
Plus, the mind of Tim Burton is most likely a horror movie.
Yeah, let's be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many nods, especially to Hammer horror.
Hammer horror, yeah, for
and
sure.
A lot of parallels with, I'd say, with Frankenstein.
The
fact that he has Vincent Price in it as the inventor in one of his final roles. Instead, they watched hours and hours of Hammer horror films.
I mean, a lot of the inspiration, like previous films for Edward Scissorhands, are from the horror genre that we'll delve into as we go on.
Also, for Edward, for the most part, his life is a bit of a horror movie that has scissors for fingers.
He has scissors for hands. He has to go through all of eternity with scissors for hands.
Yes.
That's not easy.
Came from one of Tim Burton's sketches.
It did. That he did when he was quite young.
Yeah. Like, a lot of his stuff comes from his sketches. And the woman who actually wrote it, I can't remember her name.
Caroline Thompson.
She was asked to do a treatment of it.
Yes, she was hired to write the screenplay, ultimately.
Yeah. And she described as writing this as almost a bit of a love letter to Tim Burton.
To Tim Burton.
As she described as the most poetic...
Articulate, I think she said. Wasn't it?
I got that right. The most articulate man who couldn't string a sentence together.
Yeah, it's a direct quote.
Because Tim Burton's not a people person.
No.
But he writes some beautiful stuff.
And this is a beautiful story.
Yes, it is. So the way I view this film is whenever I'm looking at Johnny Depp's Edward, I'm actually looking at Tim Burton.
You're looking at Tim.
This is how I think Tim Burton is going through day to day. He is a very dark, emo, gothic character in an otherwise very bright and colourful environment.
He doesn't quite belong. No matter how hard he tries, he's just destined to forever be the outcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially people have tried to make him fit in and change.
Yeah.
It just
doesn't work.
It doesn't quite work.
Fundamentally change
So
someone.
do you want to break down the basic plot of this film?
All right, so the basic plot is, we presume this is set in the early 60s or mid 60s. There it goes. It's an unnamed place, this little, very colourful cul-de-sac where an Avon lady, a very kind Avon lady, is not having a lot of luck with her local neighbourhood. So she decides to take a visit on the off chance to the very creepy ass looking castle situated at the top of the hill.
Ominous looking castle.
Yeah. What I do just quickly love is this character is called Peg. She bypasses Esmeralda, who's the very pious religious woman.
Yeah.
She bypasses her and decides to go to the really creepy castle just on the off chance that someone there might want Avon. I love that. That just dawned on me this time watching it. But anyway, she goes to this castle, and it's there that she happens upon this man with scissors for hands, who's been living there all alone. He's called Edward, and she decides that she can't leave him up there all alone. She decides to bring him back down to her house. I was like that
for her. You can debate how right was it for her to take him there. I think later on in the film she comes around that maybe he was better off there.
Well, he was
safer there, but
she has the best.
She's not afraid of him at any point.
Those are your hands. Those are your hands.
No, she's initially perturbed when she mistakes the knives. She thinks he's holding knives, but then she realises it's his hands.
Yeah, but she instantly just wants to help him.
That maternal instinct just immediately kicks in, and she thinks, well, I can't leave this poor boy up here all alone. I'm going to take him back down with me where he can stay. And being the 60s, again, we presume, and being a very close-knit neighbourhood, neighbours become very nosy at this new arrival.
Tim Burton did say
fascinated with him.
He never wanted to poke fun suburban lifestyle, but he does.
But he kind of does. Especially with the housewives, the suburban housewives. And anyway, they become fascinated with Edward. They initially take him in. They all love him. He becomes, a very fixed part of the neighbourhood and the lifestyle.
You don't feel them all saying, "Oh, I've got a doctor friend that can help you with that." They all say it to him that they can have someone that can help him, but no one actually does help him.
Yeah, it makes that extra step. And anyway, he becomes part of the Boggs family. Peg Boggs.
Not the light to stare, dear.
And the family grow to love him, see him as a second son. It's also part of the family that he meets Kim, who's played by Winona Ryder. He falls madly in love with her. She's already in a relationship with a not-so-nice guy. And then at some point in the films, things start to take a turn. The neighbours start turning on Edward one by one. The fascination with the outcast very quickly wanes. Yes. And as is in the case of Frankenstein, the monster, the creature is just
ran out of town, essentially.
He's literally, he's outcasted again.
The best way to describe the town's relationship is through her little brother.
Yeah.
The youngest, who instantly wants to take him to show and tell.
Because
he's cool. That kind of represents how the town seems. He's new. He's interesting. Later on in the film, he's instantly amazed by something that someone else has brought to show and tell, because he's not the thing of the week anymore.
He's not the cool thing anymore. The fascination it's dried out. It's just Edward.
Because it says that he is obviously naturally extremely skilled with these scissors.
Yeah, he is.
And he's a really good gardener. And I love the bits where he's doing everyone's gardens, and then suddenly it goes into hair.
Yeah.
I think I could do with that myself. So the women, they are so fascinated by him.
Yes.
To almost some to a sexual manner.
We
don't even know if he has the equipment.
We don't. There's a lot of continuing mystery surrounding Edward.
Because his origin is both obvious and not.
Yes.
Shall I go into what the origin of his...
Yeah, let's do it.
Because we're introduced in a flashback to Vincent Price's... What do you call him? The inventor.
He's just credited as the inventor.
Yeah, obviously Vincent Price, one of the most famous moustaches in film.
Yes, yeah.
I know he was a hero of Tim Burton.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
He's the trio of Vincent Price, Peter Cushing, and Christopher Lee, and Tim Burton got to work with 2 out of 3 of them. I'm not sure. I don't think he worked with Peter Cushing.
I don't think he did.
No, he came on the scene after that.
In early 90s.
Something incredible.
It
either was his final role or one of his final roles.
Yeah.
And he was retired at that point.
I think he was, yeah.
And it shows him living in this big castle.
On top of the hill.
Castle, his manor, whatever it is, on his own. But he's surrounded by his inventions, and he's got machines doing everything from chopping lettuce to making cookies. And at some point, I pointed out to you, I've watched this film so many times, and I only noticed this time, is all of his machines have faces.
Yeah.
Apart from the one he decides to make into a man.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously lonely. He's gleeful in his machines, but I think he's lonely.
Eccentric.
And that's why he's
inventor. Tried
to personalise all of his machines. And he makes cookies and wants a heart-shaped one. And he just kind of goes over to, I think, he holds up the heart and sees a machine behind it. And it's just chopping lettuce.
It's that light bulb moment.
Yeah, and he holds up to him. And it's the only one that doesn't have a face.
Yeah.
That's what I think. He's got knives he's chopping. It's not scissors. So he decides to turn this machine, and you actually do see in the lab, go from this machine, you see the drawings from that to creating a man.
Yeah.
For some reason, leaves the hands to last.
Yes, we just accept it.
And this is the Frankenstein element. We don't see the creation part of it. We don't know how... Things he bleeds and he can eat, but he doesn't need to eat. So, there's a biological element to him, but I do think he could be biomechanical.
Well, he basically is, because we also learn at the end of the film that he can't age. So it's this...
How long has he been... We discussed this, how long do we think he's been up there? If this is set in the 50s or 60s.
60s, I definitely think it's 60s.
Judged by the industrialness of the machines, it could even be Victorian, the way Vincent Price is dressed. It could even be the Victorian era that he is... Maybe the end of the 1800s.
It could very well
I
be.
reckon he's been there for about 50, 60 years on his own.
Well, we really kind of, once we started talking about it, we really started looking very deeply into it. And When Peg goes up to the castle at the beginning of the film and she meets Edward, she asks him about his family, or, you know, where are your parents, your mother, your father? And it just struck me that she clearly has never heard of the inventor before. Otherwise, she'd have said, you know, where's the old man that lives up here with you? Where's the inventor?
Your father?
He didn't wake up.
So clearly the inventor and Edward predate a lot of the neighbours moving into that cul-de-sac, because none of the housewives, none of the husbands ever refer to the
It's almost like they forget about it. They forget that it exists.
Totally ignore it, which visually, obviously, you wonder how, because
it's almost like
so striking.
It's almost like the mountain
different.
in The Grinch.
Yeah, it is about yeah. So yeah, we were just the timeline basically is unknown, but I think it's fair to say that he's been living up there on his own for a very, very
the
long time
element
before Peg
is
finds him.
How much of him is new? Has he robbed graves for him, or is he just that great of an inventor? We don't know. No, because when we see him, we do see him without legs at one point, or like his legs kind of like crossed over him.
Yeah,
you know, when he's trying to teach him like
poetry
and etiquette. Has he left him with those hands in order to try and teach him how to be gentle? Because knowing that his hands can hurt.
Potentially.
It's a silly decision, but the inventor dies. It's a sad moment because he's holding his hands at his present.
It's tragic.
And he just dies because when he asks him about his father, says he didn't wake up.
He said he just didn't wake up?
Yeah.
Didn't wake up.
It kind of makes you think, like, did he bury him, or has he just, like, put him to bed somewhere? Does he not understand what death is?
Or, you know, is he still in that room, just a skeleton?
I feel like he would have moved him.
Maybe, do you reckon?
Yeah. But he touches his face and cuts his...
there's... He
It's
doesn't understand.
a tragedy. It's a Shakespearean Gothic tragedy, is this story.
It's literally almost like a child experiencing death for the first time, and that he can clearly register that something's not quite right.
Yeah, but he's got no one there to actually tell him what has happened.
No, and then, you know, when he strokes his, let's just call him his father's face, and obviously, you know, blood pours out from the wound. And it's so sad. And throughout the film, Edward continuously flashbacks to his time with the inventor, just, you know, to remind us, I guess, of how lonely he's been and how different things could have been.
He's covered in like little scars from like nicking his face.
Yeah, he's constantly, you know, hurting himself.
Because it's literally his hands.
Yeah, let's give the guy a break. But also his outfit, the famous sort of leather. All-in-one piece. It
almost looks like straight from. It's kind of mad how closely the design actually does resemble the drawing.
Yeah. But I mean, is that part of his skin, or is that actually a suit that the inventor made for him, or is it just part of Edward's skin? Basically, we never know. That's another mystery surrounding him.
Yeah. Because
he put the clothes that Peg eventually gives him, like the white shirt and the suspenders and the pants. He puts them on over the leather thing.
Well, he wouldn't be able to take them off, would he?
No, but she could help him in that.
Yeah. One thing I love is that throughout the movie, as the town starts to slowly turn on him, the outfit that he's been given just slowly gets more and more destroyed until eventually I love the shot of him like walking down the street and he's just
tearing it off. Yeah.
Flinging the scissors everywhere, just chopping it away. Like, it is great.
It is. It really is.
And I honestly do think she does realise that maybe it wasn't such a nice thing to bring him down from there. She
realises, things have really started to take a turn. Interestingly as well, sidebar, we did consider doing this film around Christmas time, because
it spans a lot of seasons, but it does the end does take place at Christmas.
It's like we start in spring, summer, and then we traverse into Christmas, and that's kind of where the film ends. So we did consider, you know, should we bring this out around Christmas time? But yeah, once we get to Christmas, Edward's been living in the community for a couple of months at this point. He's been sexually harassed.
I do love how they decided to put him in the waterbed.
Not the smartest decision. Not the smartest decision.
I do kind of like it. For the most part, the family especially just kind of gets used to him having...
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. But I mean, it's the... I can't remember her name, the character, but the lady that clearly fancies him, and she's the one that spreads the rumour that he attempted to assault her, and that's really when things start taking a turn.
Yeah, that's because he rejected her.
He doesn't understand.
He doesn't understand what's
He
going
doesn't
on.
know what sex is. He
So,
doesn't know.
She showed me the back room and then she took her clothes off.
And then she
He
took her clothes
doesn't
off.
understand. Think of it. He feels love for
He falls in
Winona
love
Ryder,
with Kim.
but he doesn't know what to do.
No.
All he knows is that her partner doesn't treat her right.
Yeah,
and doesn't
exactly.
make her happy.
Yeah, that's all he sees. That's
Yeah.
all he sees. So yeah, things really do start taking a turn for him, and then ultimately the poor guy has to retreat back to the castle.
Yeah, because he saves her brother from a drunken boyfriend. Nearly runs him down. Well, his mate does. And obviously, because he's got scissors, he's cutting him up, and all people see is him attacking. There's a great way to describe this. Because they have a barbecue, or the neighbourhood force a barbecue on this family.
Yeah.
And old guy comes up saying, "Don't let anyone call you a cripple."
Yeah.
He's got like an old war injury. Then later on in the film, when the town turns, where is he? Where is he? That cripple. There's so many parallels to when they accept him to when they don't.
The hypocrisy of it. And you were saying earlier before, Peg, the mum, where I think it slowly starts to dawn on her that, maybe it wasn't the best decision to bring him down here. But I don't think that she's not thinking selfishly in that moment, because as the town turn on Edward, they also start to turn on the family a little bit as well, because they are so closely associated with
there is
him
definitely a
at this point.
selfishness there.
I think there is, but I do think that fundamentally she's coming from a point of view that he is not safe here. It's like, now that they've turned on him, they're not going to let this go. And she does say, doesn't she, like maybe he would be better going up back there, because at least there that he's safe. Yeah. It's like, well, arguably not, because they could easily just storm the castle at the top of the hill as well. But maybe there is a selfish aspect.
The police aren't useless as well either in this one. There's one cop.
I want to talk about the police actually in this. There's a scene in the film, a sequence which leads to Edward being arrested. He's manipulated into robbing Jim's house, and Jim is Kim's boyfriend, who's played by Anthony Michael Hall. In a bit of like a weird
for at the casting,
time. Traditionally the nerd.
Kind of feels like
plays the bully in this.
Kind of feels like a younger version of his character from Halloween Kills.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
But yeah, Edward is conned into robbing Jim's house, where unbeknownst to Kim, the whole ploy was to leave him in there so he would get arrested as well. There's been an ongoing rivalry between Jim and Edward kind of throughout the film. And anyway, Edward is arrested, and the policeman actually kind of takes a bit of a liking to Edward. I don't
think they intended to leave him there, because they wanted to rob it. They wanted the insurance to pay for it.
They don't care that he gets arrested.
Yeah.
Well, Jim doesn't care that he gets arrested. But yeah. And when he's taken in by the police, this one particular officer
knows he
knows he was probably conned into this, because I think you spend any time with Edward, he doesn't have a nasty bone in his body. He doesn't know what it is to lie or to manipulate.
He did know what he was doing.
He knew it was Jim's house.
He knew it, yeah. He did it because she wanted him to.
Yeah, but that's a really touching moment as well. But I do love this moment with the policeman where he's talking to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is just, baffled. He's never met anyone or anything like Edward before.
Well, it's when they take him to the bank, he's like, you've got no form of ID, no social security. He's like, you don't exist.
You may as well not even exist. Just so blasé. But I love this moment with the policeman, and he's like, yeah, but is he going to be all right?
It seems clear that his awareness of what we call reality is radically underdeveloped.
But will he be all right out there?
Oh, yeah, he'll be fine.
Listen, it could keep me up all night worrying about you. You watch yourself here.
And this is like psychiatrist is like, yeah, well, he's this, and this. And then the policeman says, no. Is he going to be okay out there? Meaning, can he survive living with people who are inherently, very hypocritical and can turn on a dime? Is he going to be okay? Like, he's concerned for his welfare.
Do you think there's a little bit of...
And I just thought that was quite touching.
So I know sometimes Tim Burton's films get criticised as being a bit whitewashed. Do you think that's coming from because he is a black policeman? Do you think that's because, especially around the time period that it's set, it's meant to be a commentary on what he could have experienced in his lifetime? People turning on him.
Yeah, potentially. I've never ever considered that.
Because he is, I think, I might be wrong here. I feel like he's the only black guy in the film.
It could be.
So maybe it could be
he's-
how the
he's
town have
certainly the main police officer
have
throughout the film.
maybe have treated him when he came to town.
Yeah, and
Fair, that's only just came to my mind.
he is the most
now.
authoritative policeman as well that we see
Yeah.
throughout the whole film. Quite possibly, he knows himself.
But when Edward's
maybe
getting
what
chased
it's
down
like.
by the town, he drives up to the gate. He just fires gunshots in the air
giving the
before
illusion.
giving the illusion. He says he's dead. It's over. He just wants them to leave him alone.
Yeah. I do think the policeman could have stuck around a little bit longer than he does, just to make sure
Yeah,
that
because they still
doesn't
they still
go
just
to
want
the
to go.
castle.
But he did more than your average
He does.
cop in
Yeah,
a film.
he cares for Edward, which it's always really touching to see.
Yeah,
in
he
the,
sees through he sees
yeah.
what's really
Yeah.
happening, and obviously it leads to a confrontation between Jim and Edward.
Yeah, the film builds up to this more and more, and of course, Kim initially when she meets Edward is frightened by him. She's a little bit not disgusted, but she doesn't understand the fascination with the guy. She's just a bit perturbed by him, and she kind of keeps a wide berth initially. She also sees him as something of a bit of an outcast, and then gradually throughout the film, she falls in love with him just as much as he does her.
Maybe that's the writer's hope that that's what would happen with Tim Burton.
Well, interestingly, sorry, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but the parallels to Frankenstein, which was a huge inspiration for this film, we made a point of saying that this is almost like Frankenstein if the villagers accepted the creature.
Yeah.
And if he was initially welcomed and taken in and given some modicum of love, but the story ends the same way anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the outcast can only be loved for a certain amount of time before they inevitably turn on him, make him into a scapegoat. So I do think maybe that was a little... I think Tim Burton was deliberately kind of toying with that idea for sure. But yeah, Kim does fall in love with him. And then in another nice little Burton twist, when after the confrontation between Jim and Edward up in the castle, she does tell Edward she loves him.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's not something you'd ever see in Creature from the Black Lagoon or Frankenstein or The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
But it still ends the same way anyway.
It still ends the same way. He's on his own. But all those, by the way, those films were all influences for Burton in doing this.
Yeah.
All feature, you know, a story of unrequited love.
I just love,
or an outcast.
I know there was a town that they actually used and painted, but there's so many nice model shots. There's it's the model village of the American. I don't know. There's such an interesting art style.
The
early
visuals.
Tim Burton especially, you can't it can't be matched. He has such an eye for things. It almost reminds me of how he has the model village in Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
It's like that, but full size.
But full size, yeah. I mean, we said at the beginning, this is a fairy tale. Visually, this is absolutely a fairy tale. Every single bungalow in the cul-de-sac is a very different colour. They're all very, pastel
They're all the same, but different.
Yeah, pale greens or pale pinks or lilacs. And of course, you know, heavily contrasting to this massive Gothic castle that's just at the end of the street. Yeah, there's something very magical to it. It's very, very stylised.
Yeah.
It's very kind of fantastical. And then obviously, you know, you've got the dinosaurs that he, in the hedges, all the different weird, wonderful shapes that he makes.
He starts to change things through the town. They start every house starts looking unique because they all want different. But do you think the very, very pastel, colourful town against the black and white castle is meant to represent colour films coming in and kind of pushing out the classic black and whites?
Could be. Could
that
absolutely be.
That Edward was very much based on.
Could very well be. Yeah.
Yeah.
His world is very black and white, ultimately, and then he's brought into this wonderful Technicolor world. Yeah, absolutely. But ultimately, again, he doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
He can't belong there.
I think. Where does this rank in your list of Tim Burton films?
Honestly, I go back and forth on this, but this and Sleepy Hollow. I think honestly it depends which one I watch at the time.
Yeah. Johnny Depp is fantastic, and you can see why they work together more often. I think it's a very hot because he doesn't have a lot of lines of dialogue. A lot of this is in his facial expression. I was trying to work out where in this his fingers actually ended.
Well,
I think obviously this is his fingers here.
I think sometimes you can tell in certain close-ups where his hand.
Yeah, because he's got very long arms. Obviously, with it makes his arms very long.
Yeah.
But I think it's when he's running with them as well. I kind of feel like he's ran and hurt himself a couple of
Yeah,
times with
it's
these, so
like-
he's always like
The scene where
he's always walking with them like out.
Yeah, after he accidentally hurts Kevin, and the police are chasing after him down the road, you can see he's kind of running with his arms like extended, like he's learned how to run at least. But yeah, saying about how he doesn't have a lot of dialogue. Johnny studied a lot of Charlie Chaplin movies, the early Charlie Chaplin films, and I think I said to you that there is something very kind of Tramp-like about the character. The Tramp, Charlie Chaplin's little character, the Tramp. There's a childlike innocence to Edward. You know, the way he sees.
I love it when he drinks
sees
booze
the
for the
world.
first time and thinks it's lemonade.
Lemonade.
It's lemonade. The dad is always an interesting one, because he's not even phased at all. But
The dad is just such he's such a weird guy.
It's kind of just, I think that's meant to be like a, because the film mainly revolves around like the American housewife in the 60s, isn't it? Like they are the main characters outside of Edward, and he just, because you literally see all the husbands just leave for work at the same time.
Yeah,
They
all the
come
cars
home at
pull
the
out
same
of the
time.
driveways, and then all the housewives are just stuck at home, nothing to do but
So it's
to
kinda
chat
like-
and gossip.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the only thing he cares about is he goes to work and sports. Because the main thing he talks to Edward about is sports, and occasionally a little bit about women.
Edward
I think in this world, I don't think the husbands care about the day to day of what's going on in the house. And I think he's never fazed by the fact that he's got scissors for hands.
No, it's one of those wonderful things about the film, and again, it's like a little twist from Tim Burton. It's like, yes, this is it's a fairy tale, and yes, it's inspired by the likes of King Kong and Hunchback and everything else, where the figures are outcasted, but again, to see the characters immediately fascinated and not outright disgusted by Edward is, I don't know, it's a little twist from Burton. Like a simple twist on a classic tale.
Yeah.
I guess. But yeah, the story ultimately ends the same way.
Yeah.
But I love this film so much. I mean, I think if I had to choose, it probably is my all-time favourite Burton movie.
Yeah, beautiful music. It is Danny Elfman, isn't it?
It's Danny Elfman, yeah. And I just to talk quickly about the ice dance scene. Like, oh my god, I think I cried the last time we watched this together. It's just so beautiful. Edward, during Christmas time, he makes an ice sculpture of Kim, and she, as he's chipping away and the ice is kind of
making snow.
It makes snowflakes, and she just starts dancing in it, and oh god, it's just so beautiful.
Well, that's essentially what leads to his downfall in the end, because he accidentally cuts her hand because he doesn't see that she's there. And her boyfriend sees it, but it's that line of film's like, oh, how do you know he's still up there? It's like, well, every Christmas it snows, and you see, like,
that's,
you kind of see that every Christmas he makes snow sculptures, which makes me think in the film that that's the first time he's done it.
Yeah. Well, interestingly as well, I guess we should have said earlier that the film does not begin in the 60s. The film starts with a very old Winona Ryder in quite good old age makeup, actually, as well. I always thought it looked pretty good for the day, who's telling her granddaughter the story of Edward Scissorhands. And then, so that's how we start the film, and then we end the film where she finishes
like
telling the story. Yeah, it's literally, it's a book. Granddaughter's in a big ass bed as well. That bed always looked huge.
Yeah, it's why don't you go visit? You could go visit him. She's like, I want to remember me how I was.
But she says before he came down here, it never snowed, and if he wasn't up there now, I don't think it would be snowing. So that, and then we pan to Edward doing another sculpture of Kim.
Ageless.
So he hasn't aged, but he also hasn't forgotten her.
Yeah. Do you remember? Was it last year's Super Bowl where God, what's his name? You know, he's in Dune and he's gonna be Wonka. Timothy Chalamet. He dressed. He did.
He dressed as.
He actually looked the part.
Yeah,
but he's not Johnny Depp.
No one is.
No one's Johnny Depp.
No one is. Especially no one is early Johnny Depp as well.
The man who never wanted to be an actor.
Yeah. But just like in talking about like the more sort of overtly horror elements of the story, I mean, we should also say, spoilers, but Jim is murdered by Edward.
Yeah, he is.
Edward does succeed in killing him, but I think the film does a good trick of making Jim so detestable that it's like we don't care. We don't mind that Jim gets a scissor right through the chest.
It's like a few changes to the story, and this would just be a Hammer horror.
You could easily turn this into a horror film. Yeah, for sure.
Like the end sequence, like when he kind of Edward loses his temper and he's like slashing things. Like, oh yeah, this is getting toward this to these people now. He is now a slasher. He is a horror villain.
The irony is that he's feeling human emotions.
Yeah.
You know, he feels jealousy, he feels
Anger.
It's like, what is this guy?
Yeah.
You know,
and all he's doing is trying to express himself.
He's human versus machine, and biomechanical. But whatever he is capable of feeling emotions, and it's just always so cruel when she tells him she loves him, but she ultimately has to leave him.
Yeah, it's not a horror movie, but the influences are there. It borrows bits from the genre.
Yeah, there's a lot. Obviously, Frankenstein is probably the main one, but there's quite a bit of Pinocchio in the story as well. Yeah. Arguably as well. You know, inventor creating a boy from scratch, and the adventures that, you know, that little guy goes on. It's not an easy ride for him either.
Doesn't Pinocchio get drunk as well?
I think Pinocchio do, yeah. Pinocchio gets manipulated hard. That donkey scene, Jesus Christ. Also, just interestingly, some of the other actors that were in consideration for the role, Tom Hanks was considered. Gary Oldman, I think, turned it down. Jim Carrey, Robert Downey Jr. I think I'm right in saying that Robert Downey was the first choice, or one of the first choices, but he was busy rehearsing for Chaplin or something like that. Michael Jackson also strongly expressed interest in this film. You know, which doesn't surprise me.
Weirdly, I could see it, but it'd be a very different movie.
I can't see him as Edward, but I can understand Jackson being fascinated by this film. He always had a fascination, didn't he, for, children's stories, and, he was obsessed with Peter Pan and Neverland and stuff.
Because he is kind of like Peter Pan in a weird way.
Yeah.
Obviously not aging.
But Johnny is perfect in this. I think that all of the cast
I don't think it would have worked without him.
No. Winona Ryder is wonderful in it. I tried to find out if this is the film that they met on, but I don't think it was. I think they'd met previously, but they were either together or they fell in love during the making of this
probably why
movie.
They've got such good chemistry. Again, without a lot of dialogue from him.
Yeah, it's a lot
and they actually don't share a lot of scenes together.
No, they don't. They don't at all. And it's a
lot
PG,
of times,
you know, there's no sex in it or anything like that. There's no...
Yeah, we don't know if he's got the parts.
We don't know if he's got the parts.
But a lot of times she is watching him from a distance. She becomes more affectionate to him from a distance.
From a distance, yeah. She watches him over time, and again, you know,
I think she sees something she sees what's there when everyone else doesn't.
She sees the gentleness, and she also.
I think she sees him slowly getting swallowed up by the world around him.
Yeah.
I think she ultimately knows what is going to happen to him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the mum starts to realise it quite early on as well, but she just tries to keep calm, carry on kind of attitude until it all just comes crumbling down.
Yeah.
But Diane Wiest plays the mum. She's brilliant. She also plays the mum in The Lost Boys, so I will forever love Diane Wiest. Yeah, the dad, Alan Arkin, he's just a strange character, funny guy to watch. Anthony Michael Hall does a really good job as well.
Yeah.
It dawned on me that Anthony Michael Hall is in 3 of my all-time favourite films. He's never a main character in them, but he's in them. So he's in The Breakfast Club and he's in The Dark Knight.
Dark Knight?
Yeah.
Oh,
he plays the reporter.
Oh, yes, of course he is.
Yeah. It's like he just pops up in these amazing films, but he's never the main character in them, but he's technically in 3 fantastic ones.
You got any more notes on this one?
Not really. No, I adore it, and I'm so happy that we got to chat about it.
It's on the list. Again, this very long list of mine of usually films I try to watch at least once a year. Usually it is around Christmas time I'll watch Edward Scissorhands, but our Christmas rota was very full this year with a lot that we really wanted to watch. We even squeezed an extra one in there.
I don't think there's another film like this.
No, there isn't. I don't think there ever will be, because I don't think you can't remake Tim Burton films.
No, you can't.
Because
so
I know Tim Burton has done remakes with Planet of the Apes, but his original stuff just doesn't work. No. I know, Nightmare Before Christmas, he didn't direct, even though it's called Tim Burton.
You just assume.
Yeah, but he didn't actually direct it. But he was heavily.
His fingerprints all over it.
Yeah. But the films he actually directs,
they are
you can't.
Yeah, they are his stories.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever try and remake them, because you can't. And Johnny Depp's performance in this, I think it would be very hard. It'd be impossible to do it any differently, and it'd still work.
Yeah, I think Edward Scissorhands is one of those rare cases where the role is so synonymous with the actor that has played him that it would be almost kind of like a kick in the teeth for anyone else to play him, I think.
Yeah.
And for anyone else
what else
to
would you do
direct
differently in the story?
Exactly.
Really?
How could you top it? It's so beautiful. In
the design of going back to the buildings. Have you ever noticed that inside the rooms everything's slightly out of proportion?
Yeah.
You have rooms that are massive and the TVs that are really small.
Really small.
Again, just
Lots of negative space in the houses as well.
Yes, it's
no clutter.
Again, it's very Tim Burton. He always messes with things like this weird warp. He has this weird warped view of the world.
Yeah. It's almost like the set of a sitcom from that era or something like that. There's an artifice to the town, which very very heavily stylized, which I think Burton and the production designer clearly were going for, and it just works like a story. You feel like once it's over and the credits roll and that gorgeous music plays, you just feel like you've read a fairy tale, or you've just borne witness to a fairy tale. So I love it. I love it very much.
Yeah, and
it's a very special film.
I feel like most people will have seen this film, but if you haven't watched it in a few years, check it out. It's worth it. Yeah, thanks for stopping by, guys. We'll see you next week.